what you said about the kind of standardization and productization of services. Clearly within complex services, there are going to be certain areas that are going to be within an organization a bit more cookie cutter. I mean, we see things where people are using, for example, requirements templates and things like that, which may have some variation around them, but ultimately using the right technology, you can standardize things like that, and procurement can guide it, but you can also standardize things like contracts. But the only way that you can move forward with this type of spend is to actually capture that process and capture the granularity, because again, it comes back to the data. I mean, when you're looking at standardizing requirements, how are you addressing that in terms of looking back at requirements that you've had before? And is it a business question that you're asking stakeholders, or is it something where you're trying to interrogate the kind of previous performance and delivery?
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, our business it has so many different components to it. Our big insights business has a lot of what we call customization, together with a lot of services that deliver annuity revenues. On the customized business, she's basically individual projects that get commissioned by the big brands around the world. Some of the things that we're looking at the moment is, within the multitude of individual commissions that we initiate, is there enough commonality that at a project level it looks random and variable, but as a quantum in terms of a volume level, if you look across all of it, is there enough consistency there that we can begin to start streamlining that, and as you say, create templates and standardizations, so that with the end result, the journey between customers commissioning things and our ability to execute that within the supply chain becomes a lot quicker and a lot smoother, and delivering a simplified process will also greatly aid the quality of what it is that we provide to our clients. So we're looking at that, and it's thirsty work. You have to do a lot of data crunching to get into it, to kind of really understand what it is that's there and what the data is telling you. Now, it's greatly aided by the fact that we are investing heavily in our supply chain data, improving all of our material master management, our onboarding processes, our reporting, and all that kind of stuff. And in doing so, I'm pretty optimistic that we'll begin to start seeing a lot of patterns to what we buy that will then aid us in terms of simplifying what we do.
And how much do you think procurement can really aid the stakeholders at the point of actually this requirements kind of generation, requirements capture at the beginning of the process?
Yeah. Well, when I started my career at Rolls-Royce, I remember a training course that they put me on, and they said, and it really resonated, which was, 80% of the cost of something is in its design. So by the time the draftsman, I mean, that wouldn't even be a phrase many people would understand these days, but it's basically the guy, again, must remind myself to use more clear language, when the drafts person kind of put that into a template and then handed it over to procurement, you then hand it to the engineer kind of replicates exactly what it is in that specification. And I think what's changed a lot over the course of the past 20 years is that actually good procurement now is working hand in hand with, in this case, the engineering function, to actually shape the specification from the get-go, so that you're designing cost reduction into the solution that you're trying to build, rather than handing it over to procurement and then saying try and buy it at the lowest price. Now, that good procurement and now the metaphor for that in our daily lives, kind of going forward 20, 30 years, is that that it's incumbent on CPOs like me to work with the business ahead of when they think they need to start speaking to suppliers, to really understand what it is that they are needing and what's that specification, and how can we shape that specification so the cost reduction is embedded in the thing that we take to market. The challenge a lot of procurement people, Johnny, is that this then takes us into the world of cost avoidance rather than cost reduction. And this, is a daily battle for us all, because most financial organizations can readily measure the difference between the price that you bought something from today versus the price that you'll buy in the future. And very easy mechanic to calculate. The challenge is that if you're putting all of your muscle into making sure that you shape the price of something in the future with a new design, so inherently that cost reduction is there from the get-go, becomes very difficult to measure. And often we use the phrase cost avoidance. You've avoided having to pay a higher price. Problem is, it's not seen in the P&L from the get-go, so it makes it very difficult to measure and activate. So then you have to think very thoughtfully about how you change the parameters of the measurement of the procurement function against what may have historically been the case. So now, do you measure the cost of your procurement against the revenue, for example, of the business, and is the gross margin changing? Pivoting those conversations are really, really tough, but it really reshapes the whole raison d'etre of why you have a procurement function in the business. And I'm pretty convinced that if you can make that pivot, to the beginning of the conversation, you suddenly become a really valuable capability for the organization.